conversion in Darwin, Australia. The wind speed is 9 km/h from the north-northeast. Pete is first. Pete is up 20.27 in T2. Pete is up 20.36 in T7. Pete improved his first with a 1:13.135. James from United Kingdom is second, up 29.00. Is provisional pole with a 1:11.286. James is up 0.02 in T2. Stu is third. James in T5 is P5, up 0.10. Stu from Scotland in T5 is P5, up 0.10. Paula from Burkina Faso in T6 is first, up 0.10. James in T11 is 7th, up 0.14. James improved his P3 with a 1:12.439. 1.153 of pole. 25 minutes remaining in the session. Andy is 8th. Andy is up 0.90 in T3. Steve is provisional pole with a 1:11.266. Andy is up 0.92 in T7. Callum is provisional pole with a 1:11.247. Henry from United Kingdom is 11th. Andy from Spain is 11th. Andy improved his fourth with a 1:11.462. 0.215 off pole. Stu is P10, up 0.51. Stu improved his P10 with a 1:13.487. 2.240 off pole. Paul from England in T14 is P6 up 0.49. Paul improved his P4 with a 111.330, 0.083 off pole. Henry in T13 is 6th up 0.57. Henry is provisional pole with a 111.231. Henry is up 0.01 in T1. Lee from England in T1 is P11 up 0.14. Lee is up 3.27 in T6. Pete from Antigua and Barbuda in T14 is 8th up 0.13. Pete improved his P8 with a 112.845, 1.614 off pole. Lee is 11th. Lee improved his 8th with a 112.686, 1.455 off pole. Stu in T12 is 11th up 0.74. Stu improved his P8 with a 112.452, 1.221 off pole. Paula in T7 is 4th up 0.14. Pete is 10th up 0.24. Steve from United Kingdom is 3rd up 0.11. Steve is up 0.52 in T10. Steve is provisional pole with a 110.858. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Callum from Seychelles is 3rd up 0.12. Henry in T14 is 2nd up 0.10. Henry improved his 2nd with a 110.880, 0.022 off pole. Andy in T13 is P6 up 0.13. Andy improved his 3rd with a 111.247, 0.389 off pole. Paula in T6 is P5 up 0.16. Pete in T6 is P10 up 0.15. Pete improved his P10 with a 112.749. 1.891 off pole. Pete is up 0.26 in T1. Paula in T7 is P6 up 0.28. Paula improved his third with a 110.970. 0.112 off pole. Steve is provisional pole with a 110.810. Pete is P10. Pete is up 0.17 in T14. Pete improved his P9 with a 112.480. 1.670 off pole. Dan from England is 12th up 26.26. Dan improved his 12th with a 148.571. 37.761 off pole. Steve is first. Steve is provisional pole with a 110.601. James in T5 is P7 up 0.11. Paula in T7 is P3 up 0.11. Steve in T11 is P1 up 0.22. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Steve is provisional pole with a 110.337. Henry is P2 up 0.17. Dan in T7 is P8 up 0.20. Dan improved his 7th with a 111.339. 1.002 off pole. Henry in T1 is second. Dan in T5 is P7 up 0.11. Henry in T6 is P2 up 0.10. James in T5 is 8th up 0.26. Hassel from Italy is 13th up 28.51. Hassel is up 28.01 in T7. Andy is P4 up 0.43. Paul is P6. Hassel in T5 is P13 up 2.69. Hassel is up 2.26 in T9. Dan in T1 is P7 up 0.24. Dan is up 0.31 in T6. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Dan is up 0.32 in T12. Dan improved his P4 with a 111.094. 0.757 off pole. Dan is up 0.03 in T1. Dan is up 0.02 in T6. Paul in T6 is 7th up 0.12. Dan is 4th. Dan improved his P4 with a 110.982. 0.645 off pole. Hassub is 13th up 0.36. Best lap is a 114.594. 4.257 off pole. Hassub is up 0.21 in T10. Hassub improved his 13th with a 114.513. 4.176 off pole. Hassub is up 0.29 in T1. James in T1 is P8. Dan is P4. Paula in T1 is P3. Paula is up 0.19 in T6. Paula is up 0.17 in T12. Paula improved his P2 with a 110.829. 0.492 off pole. Hassub in T6 is P13 up 0.17. Five minutes remaining in the session. Pete in T1 is P9. Hassub in T1 is P13. Callum in T1 is P6 up 0.11. Henry is P3 up 0.12. Hassub is P13 up 0.40. Lee is P11. Lee improved his 10th with a 112.407. 2.070 off pole. Hassub is 13th. Hassub improved his P12 with a 113.346. 3.009 off pole. Henry in T1 is P3 up 0.13. Best lap is a 1:10.880. 0.543 off pole. Pete in T6 is P9 up 0.40. Lee in T12 is 10th up 0.23. Lee improved is 9th with a 1:12.155. 1.818 off pole. Pete in T1 is P10 up 0.22. Pete is up 0.65 in T6. Pete is up 0.75 in T12. Pete improved is P9 with a 1:11.694. 1.357 off pole. Pete is up 0.02 in T5. Hassab in T6 is P12 up 0.10. Hassab is up 0.01 in T13. The qualifying session is now in overtime. Andy in T1 is P5. Hassab is 12th. Best lap is a 1:13.346. 3.009 off pole. Hassab is up 0.01 in T7. Hassab is up 0.03 in T1. Pete is P9. Hassab is P12 up 0.20. Hassab is up 0.16 in T11. The race session is at R-Factor conversion in Darwin, Australia. The wind speed is 7 km/h from the north-northeast. Steve is first. Paula from Burkina Faso is P2. Henry from United Kingdom is third. Dan from England is fourth. Andy from Spain is P5. Callum from Seychelles is P6. Paul from England is P7. James from United Kingdom is P8. Pete from Antigua and Barbuda is P9. Lee from England is 10th. Stu from Scotland is 11th. Hassab from Italy is P12. Alex from England is 13th. Steve from United Kingdom is first. Session. Race start. Paula is P2. Henry is P3. Paula in T1 is second. Henry is P3. Paula in T6 is P2. Henry is third. T8 is P2. Henry in T10 is P3. Paula in T14 is P2. Henry is P3. Paula is P2. Stu entering the pits is 13th. Henry is 3rd. Best lap is a 1:20.299. 1.612 of the fastest lap. Paula is 2nd, 0.7 ahead of Henry. Stu exiting pits. Henry is 3rd, 0.7 behind Paula. Paula in T5 on lap 2 is P2, 0.8 ahead of Henry. Henry in T6 is P3, 0.6 behind Paula. Paula is 2nd, 0.5 ahead of Henry. Henry in T8 is P3. Paula in T11 is 2nd, 0.5 ahead of Henry. Henry in T14 is 3rd, 0.5 behind Paula. Paula is P2, 0.5 ahead of Henry. Henry is 3rd, 0.5 behind Paula. Paula on lap 3 is 2nd, 0.5 ahead of Henry. Henry in T1 is P3. Best lap is a 1:11.114. Paula is P2, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry in T2 is P4. Paula is 2nd, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry on lap 3 is P4, 1.1 behind Andy. Paula on lap 3 is 2nd, 1.1 behind Steve. Henry in T7 is P4, 1.1 behind Andy. Paula in T11 is 2nd, 1.2 behind Steve. Henry in T12 on lap 3 is P4, 1.0 behind Andy. Paula is 2nd, 1.3 behind Steve. Henry is 4th, 1.3 behind Andy. Paula is 2nd, 1.5 behind Steve. Stu entering the pits is P13. Henry in T1 is P4, 1.2 behind Andy. Dan in T1 on lap 4 is P6, 0.3 behind Alex. Henry in T3 is P4, 1.2 behind Andy. Andy was 3.6 faster last lap. Paula is 2nd, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry in T6 is 4th. Paula in T8 is 2nd. Best lap is a 1:11.408. 0.533 of the fastest lap. Henry in T10 is 4th, 1.0 behind Andy. Paula in T14 is 2nd, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry is 4th, 0.9 behind Andy. Paula is 2nd, 0.9 behind Steve. Paula was 0.5 faster last lap. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Henry is P4. Paula in T1 on lap 5 is P2, 0.8 behind Steve. Henry is 4th, 0.9 behind Andy. Paula in T5 is 2nd, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry is 4th, 0.9 behind Andy. Paula is P2, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry is P4, 0.8 behind Andy. Paula in T10 on lap 5 is P2, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry in T11 is P4, 0.9 behind Andy. Paula is second, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry is fourth, 0.8 behind Andy. Paula on lap 6 is second, 1.1 behind Steve. Henry is P4, 0.8 behind Andy. Paula is second, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry is P4, 0.6 behind Andy. Paula in T5 is P2, 1.2 behind Steve. Henry is P4, 0.4 behind Andy. Paula is P2. Best lap is a 1:11.102. 0.227 of the fastest lap. Henry is P4, 0.6 behind Andy. Paula in T12 is second, 1.2 behind Steve. Henry in T13 is P4, 0.7 ahead of Alex. Paula is P2. Henry is 4th, 0.7 behind Andy. Paula is P2, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry in T1 is P4, 0.6 behind Andy. Paula in T2 is P2, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry in T3 is P4, 0.6 behind Andy. Paula is P2, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry in T6 is 4th, 0.5 behind Andy. Paula in T7 is second, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry in T8 is P4, 0.5 behind Andy. Paula in T12 on lap 7 is P2, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry in T13 is P4, 0.4 ahead of Alex. Paula is P2. Henry is 4th. Paula in T1 is second. Best lap is a 1:10.962. 0.087 of the fastest lap. Henry in T1 is P4, 0.5 ahead of Alex. Paula is second. Henry in T5 is P4, 0.3 ahead of Alex. Paula in T6 is P2. Henry in T6 is 4th. Paula in T9 is second, 1.1 behind Steve. Henry is 4th. Paula in T14 is P2, 1.2 behind Steve. Henry is P4, 0.4 ahead of Alex. Paula is second, 1.4 behind Steve. Henry on lap 9 is P4, 0.4 ahead of Alex. Alex is 5th, 0.3 behind Henry. Henry in T1 is P4, 0.4 ahead of Alex. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Alex in T3 is 5th, 0.2 behind Henry. Henry in T5 is 5th, 0.1 behind Alex. Alex in T6 is 4th, 0.5 ahead of Henry. Henry is 5th, 0.5 behind Alex. Alex in T8 is 4th, 0.5 ahead of Henry. Henry in T10 is P5, 0.5 behind Alex. Alex in T14 is P4. Henry is 5th, 0.5 behind Alex. Alex is 4th, 0.5 behind Andy. 0.8 ahead of Callum. Henry is 5th, 0.4 behind Alex. Andy is 4th, 0.1 behind Alex. Paul is P7. Best lap is a 1:11.544. 0.895 of the fastest lap. Henry is P5, 0.1 ahead of Paul. Henry lost 6th to Callum. Paul in T6 is 5th, 0.8 ahead of Callum. Callum in T7 on lap 10 is 6th, 0.7 behind Paul. Paul on lap 10 is P5, 0.8 ahead of Callum. Callum in T12 is P6. Paul is P5, 0.6 behind Dan. Callum is P6, 0.6 ahead of Henry. Paul is P5, 0.6 behind Dan. Callum in T1 is P6, 0.8 behind Paul. Paul in T1 on lap 11 is P5, 0.5 behind Dan. Callum in T2 is 7th. Best lap is a 1:11.749. 1.100 of the fastest lap. Paul on lap 11 is P5, 0.7 behind Dan. Callum in T6 is 7th. Paul in T7 is P5, 0.9 behind Dan. Callum in T8 is 7th, 0.8 behind Henry. Paul in T12 is 5th. Callum is P7. Paul is P5, 0.6 behind Dan. Callum is P7. Paul is P5, 0.7 behind Dan. Callum in T1 is P7, 1.2 behind Henry. Henry was 1.6 faster last lap. Paul in T3 is P5, 0.5 behind Dan. James in T4 is 8th, 1.5 behind Callum. Paul is 5th, 0.5 behind Dan. Henry in T6 is P6, 1.5 behind Paul. Paul is 5th. James in T8 on lap 12 is 8th, 1.0 behind Callum. Paul in T13 is 5th, 0.4 behind Dan. Henry is P6, 1.5 behind Paul. Paul is 5th, 0.5 behind Dan. James is P8, 0.6 behind Callum. James was 1.9 faster last lap. Paul in T1 is 5th, 0.2 behind Dan. Henry is 6th. Five minutes remaining in the session. Alex in T6 is P3, 1.2 behind Paula. Paul is P5, 0.6 behind Dan. Alex in T8 on lap 13 is P3, 1.0 behind Paula. Paul in T7 is 5th, 0.5 behind Dan. Alex in T14 is 3rd, 0.8 behind Paula. Paul in T12 is 5th, 0.3 behind Dan. Alex on lap 13 is 3rd, 0.8 behind Paula. Paul is 5th. Alex in T1 is P3, 0.9 behind Paula. Paul in T1 is P5, 0.2 behind Dan. Alex in T4 on lap 14 T14 is P3, 0.6 behind Paula. Alex was 3.4 faster last lap. Paul in T4 is P5, 0.3 ahead of Henry. Alex in T6 on lap 14 is P3, 0.6 behind Paula. Paul in T6 is P5, 0.4 ahead of Henry. Henry was 0.9 faster last lap. Alex in T11 is P3. Paul in T9 on lap 14 is 5th, 0.3 ahead of Henry. Paula is P3, 0.4 behind Alex. Paul in T14 on lap 14 is 5th, 0.2 ahead of Henry. Paula is 3rd, 0.5 behind Alex. Paul on lap 15 is 5th battling Henry. Paula on lap 15 is P3, 0.6 behind Alex. Henry in T1 is 5th. Best lap is a 1:10.992. Paul 3:43 of the fastest lap. Paula is P3, 1.1 behind Alex. Henry in T5 is 5th, 0.4 ahead of Paul. Paula in T7 is 3rd, 1.3 behind Alex. Alex was 1.2 faster last lap. Henry in T7 is 5th, 0.4 behind Dan. Paula in T13 is 3rd, 1.5 behind Alex. Henry is 5th. Paula on lap 15 is 3rd, 1.5 behind Alex. Paul is 6th, 1.0 behind Henry. Paula in T1 is 3rd, 1.5 behind Alex. Paul is 6th, 1.2 behind Henry. Paula in T3 on lap 16 is P3, 1.4 behind Alex. Dan on lap 16 is 5th, 0.9 behind Henry. Paula in T6 is P3, 1.4 behind Alex. Alex was 1.0 faster last lap. Dan on lap 16 is P5, 0.7 behind Henry. Andy is 8th. Best lap is a 1:11.145. 0.496 of the fastest lap. Dan in T8 is P5, 1.0 behind Henry. Andy in T7 is 8th, 0.2 ahead of James. Dan in T14 is 5th. Andy in T13 is P8, 0.5 ahead of James. Dan on lap 16 is P5, 1.1 behind Henry. Andy is 8th, 0.3 ahead of James. Dan in T1 on lap 17 is 5th, 1.4 behind Henry. Andy in T1 is P8, 0.2 ahead of James. Dan is 5th, 1.1 behind Henry. Andy is 8th, 0.6 ahead of James. Dan in T6 is P5, 1.1 behind Henry. The leader has just finished the race. Steve finished first. Alex finished second. Paula finished third. Henry finished P4. Dan finished 5th. Paul finished 6th. Callum finished P7. Andy finished 8th. James finished P9. Pete finished P10. Lee finished 11th. Assetto finished P12. The race session is at R-factor conversion in Darwin, Australia. The wind speed is 3 km/h from the north-northeast. Pete is first. James from United Kingdom is second. Andy from Spain is third. Callum from Seychelles is P4. Paul from England is fifth. Dan from England is sixth. Henry from United Kingdom is P7. Paula from Burkina Faso is 8th. Alex from England is P9. Steve from United Kingdom is 10th. Lee from England is P11. Hassab from Italy is 12th. Stu from Scotland is 13th. Pete from Antigua and Barbuda is P1. the session. Race start. James is P2. Andy is third. Callum in T1 is P2. Pete is third. Callum in T3 is P2. Pete in T5 is P3. Callum in T6 is P2. Alex in T6 is 4th. Callum in T8 is P2. Alex in T9 is P4. Callum in T13 is second. Alex in T14 is P4. Callum is P2. Alex is P4, 0.3 behind Pete. Dan on lap 2 is 5th, 1.5 behind Alex. Pete in T1 on lap 2 is P4, 0.6 behind Alex. Callum in T3 on lap 2 is P2, 0.1 behind James. Pete is 4th, 0.9 behind Alex. Callum is P2, 0.5 behind James. Alex in T6 is third. Best lap is a 1:23.232. 3.169 of the fastest lap. Callum in T9 on lap 2 is P2, 0.8 behind James. Dan in T10 is 5th, 0.6 behind Pete. Stu in T10 is P8, 0.1 ahead of Paul. Dan is 4th, 0.2 behind Pete. Hassab is 6th, 0.9 behind Steve. Andy is P7, 0.9 ahead of Henry. Hassab on lap 3 is P6, 0.9 behind Steve. Pete in T1 is 4th. Best lap is a 1:14.365. 3.428 of the fastest lap. Alex in T5 is second, 1.5 behind James. Hassab is 5th, 0.9 behind Steve. Alex is second, 1.1 behind James. Hassab in T6 is 5th, 1.1 behind Steve. Alex in T10 is second, 1.0 behind James. Hassab in T9 is 5th. Best lap is a 1:15.061. 4.124 of the fastest lap. James is second. Steve is P3, 0.1 ahead of James. James on lap 3 is P4, 0.5 ahead of Hassab. Steve is P3, 1.1 ahead of James. James in T1 is 4th, 0.2 ahead of Hassab. Steve is P3, 1.2 ahead of James. Steve was 9.1 faster last lap. James in T4 is P4, 1.2 behind Steve. Steve is P3. Best lap is a 1:12.417. 1.480 of the fastest lap. James in T6 is P4, 1.0 behind Steve. Steve was 9.1 faster last lap. Steve in T8 is third, 0.9 ahead of James. James in T10 is P4. Steve in T14 on lap 4 is third, 0.9 ahead of James. James is fourth, 0.9 behind Steve. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Steve is P3. Best lap is a 1:11.495. 0.558 of the fastest lap. James in T1 is P4, 1.0 behind Steve. Steve is P3, 0.9 behind Dan. James in T3 is 4th, 1.1 behind Steve. Steve in T5 is P3. James is P4, 1.2 behind Steve. Steve is P3, 0.6 behind Dan. James in T7 is 4th, 1.3 behind Steve. Steve in T10 is 3rd, 0.5 behind Dan. James in T13 is P4, 1.3 behind Steve. Steve is P3. James is 4th, 1.2 behind Steve. Steve is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. Steve was 0.8 faster last lap. James in T1 on lap 6 is P4, 1.2 behind Steve. Steve is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. James in T3 is 4th, 1.3 ahead of Henry. Steve in T5 is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. James in T6 is 4th, 1.2 behind Steve. Steve is P3, 0.6 behind Dan. James in T8 is 4th, 1.0 ahead of Henry. Steve in T11 is 3rd. James is 4th, 1.3 behind Steve. Steve is 3rd. Henry is P5, 1.0 behind James. Steve is P3, 0.5 behind Dan. Henry in T1 is 5th. Best lap is a 1:10.936. 0.264 of the fastest lap. Steve in T3 is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. Henry is 5th, 0.8 behind James. Steve is 3rd, 0.6 behind Dan. Henry in T6 is P5, 0.5 behind James. Steve is 3rd, 0.5 behind Dan. Henry in T9 is 5th. Steve in T13 is P3, 0.3 behind Dan. Henry on lap 7 is P5, 0.3 behind James. Steve is P3, 0.3 behind Dan. Paul is 8th, 1.0 behind Callum. Steve in T1 is 3rd, 0.2 behind Dan. James in T1 is P5, 0.3 behind Henry. Henry was 1.0 faster last lap. Steve is 3rd, 0.4 behind Dan. James in T5 is P5. Best lap is a 1:11.415. 0.743 of the fastest lap. Steve is 3rd, 0.4 behind Dan. James in T7 is P5, 0.5 behind Henry. Steve in T10 on lap 8 is P3, 0.3 behind Dan. James in T12 is P5, 0.6 behind Henry. Steve is 3rd, 0.4 behind Dan. James is 5th, 0.5 behind Henry. Steve is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. 10 minutes remaining in the session. James in T1 is 5th, 0.5 behind Henry. Steve is 3rd, 0.6 behind Dan. James in T3 is 5th, 0.5 behind Henry. Steve is 3rd, 0.8 behind Dan. Henry in T6 is P4, 0.5 ahead of James. Steve is 3rd. Best lap is a 1:11.134. 0.462 of the fastest lap. James in T9 is 5th, 0.6 behind Henry. Steve on lap 9 is P3, 0.6 behind Dan. Henry in T14 is P4, 0.8 ahead of James. Steve is P3, 0.5 behind Dan. Henry is P4, 0.8 ahead of James. Steve in T1 is 3rd, 0.6 behind Dan. Paul is P8. Best lap is a 1:11.317. 0.645 of the fastest lap. Steve is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. Paul is P8, 1.1 behind Callum. Steve in T6 is 3rd, 0.7 behind Dan. Henry in T6 is 5th. Best lap is a 1:10.922. 0.250 of the fastest lap. Steve in T10 is 3rd, 0.3 behind Dan. Henry in T11 on lap 10 is P5, 1.2 behind James. Steve is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. Henry is 5th, 0.9 behind James. Steve is P3, 0.5 behind Dan. Henry is 5th, 0.9 behind James. James was 1.7 faster last lap. Steve on lap 11 is P3, 0.4 behind Dan. Henry in T2 is P5, 0.6 behind James. Steve on lap 11 is 3rd, 0.4 behind Dan. Henry on lap 11 is P5, 0.7 behind James. Steve is 3rd, 0.3 behind Dan. Henry in T7 is 5th, 0.8 behind James. Steve in T11 is P3, 0.2 behind Dan. Henry in T12 is P5. Steve is P3, 0.2 behind Dan. Henry is 5th, 0.6 behind James. Steve on lap 12 is 3rd, 0.1 behind Dan. Dan in T1 is P3, 0.4 behind Steve. Henry in T1 is 5th, 0.7 behind James. Dan is P3, 0.3 behind Steve. Henry in T5 on lap 12 is P5, 0.4 behind James. Dan in T6 is 3rd, 0.6 behind Steve. Henry in T6 is P5, 0.4 behind James. Dan is 3rd, 0.7 behind Steve. Henry is P5, 0.5 behind James. Dan in T14 on lap 12 is P3, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry is P5, 0.3 behind James. Paul in T13 is P8, 0.5 behind Callum. Steve is P3, 0.1 behind Dan. Dan in T1 on lap 13 is P3, 0.6 behind Steve. Henry in T1 on lap 13 is 5th, 0.2 behind James. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Dan in T5 is P3. Best lap is a 111.191. 0.612 of the fastest lap. Henry is P5, 0.4 behind James. Dan is third. Henry in T7 is P5. Dan in T11 on lap 13 is P3, 0.9 behind Steve. Henry in T12 is P5. Dan is P3. Henry is 5th, 0.3 behind James. Dan on lap 14 is 3rd, 1.0 behind Steve. Henry in T1 is 5th, 0.1 behind James. Henry passed James for 4th. Dan in T2 on lap 14 is 3rd, 1.3 behind Steve. Steve was 1.1 faster last lap. Henry is 5th, 0.2 behind James. Dan in T6 is 3rd. Henry in T6 is 5th, 0.4 behind James. Dan in T8 is 3rd, 1.4 behind Steve. Henry in T9 is 5th, 0.3 behind James. Callum in T7 is 8th, 1.0 behind Paul. Henry in T14 is 5th. Callum in T12 is 8th, 1.0 behind Paul. Henry is P5, 0.2 behind James. Callum is 8th, 1.1 behind Paul. Paul was 0.6 faster last lap. Henry in T1 is 5th, 0.3 behind James. Callum in T1 is 8th, 1.2 behind Paul. Henry in T5 is P5, 0.2 behind James. Callum in T3 is P8, 1.2 behind Paul. Paul was 0.5 faster last lap. Henry on lap 15 is P5, 0.3 behind James. Callum in T6 is 8th, 1.2 behind Paul. Henry in T10 is P5, 0.4 behind James. Callum is P8, 1.2 behind Paul. Henry is 5th, 0.6 behind James. Callum in T14 is 8th, 1.0 behind Paul. Henry is 5th, 0.7 behind James. Callum is P8, 1.2 behind Paul. Henry on lap 16 is 5th, 0.6 behind James. Paula in T1 is 9th, 1.4 behind Callum. Henry in T5 on lap 16 is P5, 0.6 behind James. Callum is 8th, 1.2 ahead of Paula. Henry is 5th, 1.3 behind James. Paula in T6 is 9th. Best lap is a 110.958. 0.379 of the fastest lap. Henry in T12 is 5th, 1.3 behind James. Paula is 9th, 0.6 behind Callum. Paula was 0.9 faster last lap. Henry is 5th, 1.2 behind James. Paula on lap 16 is P9, 0.4 behind Callum. Henry in T1 is P5, 1.2 behind James. Paula is 9th, 0.2 behind Callum. Henry in T3 on lap 17 is 5th, 1.3 behind James. Paula is P9, 0.6 behind Callum. Paula was 1.2 faster last lap. The leader has just finished the race. Alex finished P1. Stu finished 12th. Pete finished P13. Steve finished P2. Dan finished P3. James finished 4th. Henry finished 5th. Andy finished P6. Paul finished P7. Callum finished 8th. Paula finished 9th. Lee is P10. Lee finished P10. Hassab finished P11.